The first one is Victor Davis Hanson. You know him if you watch the news. He is a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution at Stanford University. He wrote a book called The Dying Citizen: How Progressive Elites, Tribalism, and Globalization Are Destroying the Idea of America. I have said publicly that Mr. Hanson is a better columnist than I am. Now that shows you about my ego, but it's a compliment to Victor Davis Hanson, who joins us now from California. Okay, so there is my spiel about American culture. You and I are contemporaries. How do you see it?
I agree with you, Bill. And I think there's three things that I've watched in the last 10 years that have been accelerants to what you outlined, that have really picked up the pace, and maybe neither one of us thought that it would accelerate to the point we are now. One was this asymmetrical globalization, and we had this bi-coastal elite, one looking at the EU, one looking at Asia, that had levels of wealth that were staggering in the history of civil rights. $7 trillion in market capitalization. So the Zuckerbergs, the Bloombergs, the Soros, the Bill Gates, there were people who had enormous influence, and they were left-wing. So the Democratic Party really metamorphosized from the old lunch bucket constituencies to a boutique agenda that was, they were never subject to the consequences of their own ideology, and they didn't care about the middle class. The second thing was that we have never seen, either percentage-wise or in actual numbers, 50 million people that were not born in the United States. 27% of all Californians were not born in America. And that was an enormous challenge for legal, diverse, meritocratic immigration and assimilation, integration, intermarriage, and we failed. So we created a kind of a tribal idea that your first identity was your superficial appearance, tribalism, which is an age-old enemy of civilization. The third thing, and I think this was important, we gave up on the Martin Luther King, even though we had made enormous progress, of the content of our character rather than the color of our skin, and we substituted race for class. So the Democratic Party came to the conclusion that if you had never gone to high school and you're on a forklift in Bakersfield, California, and you're a white working person, you have white privilege. And an Oprah or LeBron or Julian Castro or somebody like that has no privilege. And that was a fundamental change in direction and I think Barack Obama did that when he redefined affirmative action, that 90-10 or 88-12 binary that had historical justification in slavery and Jim Crow, to diversity. And by diversity, he meant, I don't care how wealthy you are. I do not care what your historical circumstances are. You can be an Indian aristocrat. You can be an Argentine aristocrat. But if you are so-called not white, you were part of the diversity. And that's 30% of the population. And those three things really changed everything, in my view.
This could not have happened without the entertainment industry, Hollywood, and the news industry getting on board, promoting, not favoring, but actively promoting that if you aren't progressive, if you don't believe the tenets of equity, which is favoritism toward certain groups, if you don't want your children to be taught one thing in school, that equity is best, that you are a villain. All right, so both of us have had to face that media, which not only disagrees, but wants to destroy, actively destroy people who will say, no, traditional America is better because if you look at history, that's how we became the most successful economic country that ever existed, by tradition, hard work, self-reliance. You take that tack now, the media will try to destroy you. I think that's a huge component in all of this.
I think you're right. I think they define their agenda, the woke agenda, that if there is any detectable inequality, it has to be attributed to somebody who's culpable. It can't be chance or fate or individual difference. And therefore, an anointed separate group, superior group, should have the power to redistribute and make things even according to what they feel. And that does not appeal to 51%. The border doesn't, The Soros crime philosophy doesn't. The energy problem doesn't. Afghanistan. So what they have done in the last 25 years, they control all of the levers of thought influence through institutional powers, professional sports, Hollywood, media, Silicon Valley, corporate boardroom, Wall Street, the foundation, my gosh. And through those institutions, they feel that they don't really need a grassroots 51% consensus because they can affect public opinion. So we're going into a midterm and we're not discussing these issues. We're discussing January 6th, hiatus. Then we go into the raid, the media bombshells, walls are closing in. Then we do the Phantom of the Opera, everybody's an enemy speech by Biden, and now we're going to go back to January 6th, and I think we'll probably end up with an indictment. But they have the ability through the permanent state or the media or all of these things that we talked about to bypass and appeal to 51% of the people. And they're revolutionaries, Bill. They don't believe in the Constitution, the custom and traditions. They don't feel that's a reliable companion for them. So
no, they want to break
filibuster
it down.
out.
Right, no doubt about it. But how culpable are the vast numbers of Americans who do not pay attention, who live their lives on this, who will not discipline themselves to actually hear both sides of the story and figure out, what is best for them, their families, and their country? So it seems to me that group has risen, and they are the targets of the propaganda that are put out by the mass media and the entertainment industry. How culpable are they?
Very much so. But when you look at civic education, it doesn't exist in the public schools. So one of the things we don't talk about is the woke education, this therapeutic detour the last 10 years. It's really one of laziness. These teachers are not qualified to teach competitive mathematical or historical or English skills. And it's sort of off-topic topics. And these kids are not educated. And yeah, we're culpable. We're a democratic, federal, constitutional republic, but this couldn't have happened without being susceptible to these influences, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or the Super Bowl halftime show or the commercials on television. But it's not, nobody in the Democratic Party says we have midterms coming up. We want to convince America that open border is well, and that these big city district attorneys are working for you, and you must pay $7 a gallon for diesel fuel. These are all in your interest. Instead, we have these psychodramas and melodramas, and we've all been diverted attention. And the Republican establishment, it seems unable, except until DeSantis with this latest Martha's Vineyard, they have been unable to bring back the issues in sort of a media fashion that the populace understands. But it was a brilliant move, the Martha's Vineyard. That was one of the most brilliant political moves I've seen in my lifetime.
Yeah, I agree.
Because now it's focused attention on something that's quite wrong and morally wrong on the border, and it's disrupted the left-wing media circus for a while.
And the hypocrisy that is active in the progressive circles. Last question for you. Used to be, if you were a classic liberal, as overwhelmingly most college professors are, that you believed in free speech, that you believed in life, human rights. And now the progressives have said, we don't really want free speech on Facebook. We don't really want Twitter throwing out vaccination dissent or election dissent. We're gonna knock that out. And if you are among the unborn, we can terminate your existence right up until the moment of birth. That seems to be 180 degrees opposite what the liberal philosophy used to be. How did that happen?
Because they're not liberals. They've been hijacked by, I call them Jacobins, that French Revolutionary Party. They believe that they are so morally superior that they deserve to use any means possible. In the 60s, they were protesting to have free speech. Now they're the deans that are suppressing free speech. They were marching on the Pentagon. Now they're in the Pentagon with woke education. They used to congregate in front of, IT&T or General Motors to protest. Now they are running the corporate boardroom. So they feel they've taken in a long march these institutions over. and they can affect public opinion. And they do
But
not
what's in it?
believe.
What's in it for them, the progressives? And this is as simple as it gets. What's in it for the progressive elite to terminate the unborn without any restrictions? What's in it
Yes.
for them?
They have certain ideological ideas about utopia, and they feel that people are subject to dark forces that are going to make women have a child they don't want, and they don't really care about human life. And they feel that whether it's blasting the walls at the border and living in a compound, or praising open borders but not in Martha's Vineyard, or saying that the teachers' unions are great and charter schools are awful while their kids are in prep school. It's based on a group of people, several million, with enormous power, and they're not subject, because of their wealth and influence and institutional control, to the ramifications of their own ideology. They're like
All
the
right.
Jacobins or Robespierre, and they have to be stopped because they're revolutionaries. They're not liberals. They're not Democrats. I don't even think they're progressive. I think they're more, I don't know, neo-socialist Stalinists. They really do not like America. They don't like its history, its tradition. It's not perfect in their way. It's not good. If it's not perfect, it's not good, and they have to destroy it. I think they're trying to destroy it and reconstitute it in something that you and I could not even imagine.
Victor Davis Hanson, thank you very much. We really appreciate it, sir.
Thank you, Bill.